To break the gravitational pull of a massive celestial body, an object must generate a violent, deafening explosion of energy. It is not a gentle drift into the atmosphere. It is a forceful, desperate evacuation. Consider the exact moment the unawakened counterpart turned their back on you. The moment the door closed. The moment the text messages stopped. The moment the warmth was replaced by a sudden, freezing distance. Society will tell you they simply lost interest. Friends will tell you to move on. Conventional dating advice will label them as emotionally unavailable and tell you to close the book. But you know, in the marrow of your bones, that this defies conventional logic. What is actually happening inside the mind of the avoidant soul when they walk away from a connection that defies human explanation? Do they feel the tear? Do they feel the absence? Or do they simply walk into the sun, entirely unbothered? Let us step inside the architecture of their mind. When the avoidant soul pulls away, it is not a peaceful departure. It is a biological and spiritual override. It requires an immense, agonizing suppression of their own intuition. They must actively lie to their own soul every single day, just to keep the distance between you intact. You are not watching someone who does not care. You are watching someone in the middle of an internal war. To truly understand their silence, we must strip away the romanticism. We must look through the sharp, unforgiving lenses of depth psychology and quantum physics. When two souls of this magnitude collide, it is rarely a peaceful event. Society conditions us to believe that profound love feels like an immediate safe haven, but the human nervous system does not always agree. For the unawakened counterpart, this collision does not register as a beautiful romance. It registers as a mortal threat. The autonomic nervous system is designed to protect us from the unknown. It seeks absolute safety in the familiar, and there is absolutely nothing familiar about a connection that bypasses the ego entirely. It triggers a deep, primal alarm. This threat response happens because you are the ultimate mirror. The renowned psychoanalyst Carl Jung spoke extensively of the shadow. The shadow contains all the repressed, unhealed, and hidden aspects of the human psyche. Most people spend their entire adult lives building impenetrable psychological fortresses to hide this shadow from the world. They build successful careers. They accumulate material wealth. They curate sophisticated personas and wear incredibly heavy masks. They create a life that feels safe, highly controlled, and utterly predictable. They learn to survive by keeping the most vulnerable parts of themselves locked in the dark. It takes an immense amount of daily energy to keep these walls standing. And then you walk into the room. When they look at you, they do not just see a loving, radiant partner. They see their own unhealed childhood. They see the exact places where they secretly feel unworthy of love. They see every compromise they have ever made. They see every lie they have ever told themselves just to survive in a chaotic world. Your pure presence acts as a blinding light. It effortlessly strips away their carefully constructed identity. This is terrifying for a mind that relies on absolute control. You must let this profound truth sink into your bones. The avoidant soul is not rejecting you. They are rejecting the unbearable weight of their own reflection. When they finally run, they experience a sudden, fleeting sense of relief. The intense pressure of the mirror is gone. The blinding light is turned off. They can breathe again. They can retreat to their comfortable, surface-level existence. They can go back to relationships that ask absolutely nothing of their depths. But this relief is a biological illusion. It is not true peace. It is simply the nervous system returning to a deeply familiar state of numbness. They mistake the absence of growth for the presence of safety. They convince themselves they have made the right choice because the immediate panic has subsided. However, within weeks or sometimes months, this comforting numbness begins to fade. What replaces it is a phenomenon we can only describe as the phantom limb syndrome of the soul. In the realm of quantum physics, your energies remain inextricably entangled. Distance does not exist in quantum mechanics. When two particles have deeply interacted, they remain connected. They instantly mirror each other's spin, regardless of the vast physical space between them. The avoidant soul feels this invisible entanglement every single day. The physical body has left the room, but the energetic tether remains completely intact. They go to their corporate meetings. They attend crowded social dinners. They drink their expensive wine and laugh at all the right times. They may even engage with karmic partners who fit perfectly into their unawakened life. They smile. They function perfectly on paper. But underneath the floorboards of their conscious mind, the quantum entanglement hums. It is a low, continuous vibration of cognitive dissonance. It is a quiet, relentless haunting that follows them from room to room. They find themselves thinking of you in the quiet, unguarded moments just before sleep. They hear a specific word. They see a certain shade of blue. They feel a sudden, inexplicable shift in the wind. Instantly, they are violently pulled back to the memory of your frequency. They feel a profound, silent grief welling up inside them. But because they lack the spiritual vocabulary to understand this grief, they bury it. They bury it under more work, more distraction, and more avoidance. They desperately convince themselves that walking away was the only logical choice. But logic cannot unbind quantum entanglement. They are running from a shadow, and you cannot outrun a shadow when the sun is directly overhead. Here's the realization that will permanently alter the trajectory of your life. It is time to completely dismantle the false narrative you have been carrying. You have spent countless quiet evenings staring at the ceiling in total exhaustion. You have become a forensic investigator of your own past. You analyze every text message they sent. You dissect every conversation you ever shared. You replay the final moments of your connection on an endless, agonizing loop. And in the silence of your room, you ask yourself the most painful question the human mind can conjure. You ask if you were simply not enough for them to stay. You wonder if a slight change in your behavior would have rewritten history. You wonder if you love them too much, or perhaps not quite enough. This is the grand illusion of the anxious heart. It is a fictional story written by your own unhealed wounds. It is the ego desperately trying to make sense of a spiritual event it cannot comprehend. You must flip the lens entirely. You must look at this dynamic through the eyes of absolute truth. You were never lacking. You were not deficient in love, patience, or understanding. You were entirely too much to hide from. Their sudden rejection is not a critique of your worth. It is the highest possible compliment the universe can pay to your spiritual gravity. Your frequency was incredibly high. It was absolutely uncompromising in its demand for authenticity. This pure frequency forced their fragile ego into a state of total emergency. The unawakened counterpart had to flee. Your presence demanded a psychological evolution they were simply not prepared to endure. They lacked the biological and emotional architecture to hold that much light. This agonizing separation is not a punishment from a cruel universe. It is a strict architectural necessity. Consider the life cycle of a massive star. Before a dying star can be reborn into something entirely new, it must collapse. It must completely cave in under the crushing weight of its own gravity. The avoidant soul must experience this exact same collapse. They must systematically dismantle the false ego they have built. They must break down the survival mechanisms they have relied on since childhood. They absolutely cannot do this while you are holding their hand. They cannot dissolve their heavy shadow while you are constantly shining your brilliant light on them. When you try to heal them, you accidentally provide a crutch for their ego. You offer them a comfortable place to hide from their own necessary destruction. They must face the terrifying dark entirely alone. They must learn to generate their own internal warmth. But there is a second, even more vital reason for this separation. This split is the ultimate, profound gift to you. While you were intensely focused on their running, you lost yourself. While you were endlessly analyzing their complex psychology, your own life force was bleeding outward. You were desperately leaking your most vital energy into a vessel that was not ready to hold it. You were pouring a vast ocean into a cracked glass. This energetic hemorrhage was slowly destroying your own foundation. You became exhausted because you were funding 2 spiritual journeys with 1 soul. The universe did not sever this connection to break your heart. The universe severed this connection because the collision was collapsing your individual sovereignty. The sheer force of the entanglement was pulling you away from your own life purpose. This brutal split forces you to stop. It forces you, the holder of space, to gather the tangled threads of your own energy. You must pull those threads violently back into your own center. You are being called to absolute, uncompromising sovereignty. You are being called to resign from your exhausting role as a spiritual savior. You must step down from the altar of their healing. You must start being the undisputed master of your own domain. Your light is no longer meant to illuminate their escape route. Your light is meant to build your own empire. When you finally accept this profound truth, the endless waiting stops. The desperate longing is replaced by a deep, unshakable peace. You realize that their departure was not a rejection. It was the exact, painful catalyst required for your ultimate expansion. How do we anchor this profound truth into the physical body? How do we move from a purely intellectual understanding of their journey to an unbreakable somatic peace within our own? You are deeply exhausted from the endless mental gymnastics. You do not need another tarot reading to tell you what they are thinking in the middle of the night. You do not need to endlessly monitor their digital footprint for tiny signs of life. You need to reclaim your empire. You need to pull your magnificent life force back into your own physical vessel. There are 3 specific internal shifts you must make today to break this agonizing loop. The first shift is the absolute practice of quantum neutrality. In the realm of advanced quantum physics, there is a fascinating concept known as the observer effect. The mere act of observing a particle fundamentally changes its behavior and its trajectory. When you constantly probe the energetic field between you and the unawakened counterpart, you are actively observing them. When you lie awake wondering if they are thinking of you or if they are hurting you, send a massive wave of energetic pressure into their quantum space. You are unintentionally feeding the very dynamic of resistance you wish to end. You must withdraw your energetic tentacles. You must become entirely neutral. Imagine pulling your scattered energy back into your chest like a fisherman reeling a heavy net from a dark sea. Let them be completely unobserved. Let them experience the true and absolute void of your absence. When you stop observing the dynamic is forced to shift on its own. You release the invisible gravitational pull that keeps them running. You give them the silent space required to actually feel the weight of their own choices. The second shift requires a deep and intentional recalibration of your nervous system. Your physical body has become chemically addicted to the cortisol and adrenaline of this connection. You have grown accustomed to the dizzying highs of the initial meeting and the devastating lows of their sudden departures. Your nervous system is currently trapped in a continuous loop of sympathetic arousal. You are living in a chronic, invisible state of fight or flight. You must teach your biology that stillness is actually safe. When the familiar panic rises in your chest, do not reach for your phone. When the heavy grief threatens to pull you under, do not reach for an external distraction. Reach instead for the solid earth beneath your feet. Breathe deeply into your lower belly to activate the vagus nerve and signal safety to your brain. Remind your physical body that you are entirely secure in this exact moment. Their journey belongs entirely to them. Your journey belongs entirely to you. You must intentionally move from the chaotic, swirling energy of the anxious heart to the grounded presence of the holder of space. The holder of space does not panic when the weather suddenly changes. They observe the storm, but they do not join it. They become the unshakable mountain. The third and final shift is the profound alchemy of the closed door. There is a deeply dangerous myth circulating in modern spiritual communities. It is the naive belief that unconditional love requires unconditional access to your life and your energy. This is fundamentally false. Holding space does not mean leaving the front door of your house wide open while a hurricane destroys your living room. You can love the avoidant soul deeply and purely. You can love them unconditionally from the exact opposite side of a heavy locked door. True spiritual maturity requires a definitive boundary. It is the quiet ability to say you see their soul and honor the immense difficulty of their path. But you will no longer allow their profound confusion to become your daily chaos. You must slide the heavy iron bolt into place. This is not an act of bitterness or anger. It is an act of supreme self-preservation and self-respect. Build your life with fierce intention. Cultivate your wealth, your physical health, your deepest friendships, and your authentic joy. Make your daily reality so incredibly beautiful and rich that you no longer require their physical presence to feel entirely complete. You must become the architect of your own sanctuary. The unawakened counterpart carries the memory of your light in their cellular structure. They cannot erase it, they cannot outrun it. Even in their deepest denial, your frequency is the compass needle they secretly consult in the dark. But their journey back to themselves, and potentially back to you, is no longer your assignment. Your assignment is your own magnificent expansion. You are not a waiting room. You are the destination. Let them navigate their own storms. Let them face the shadow they have run from for so long. It is the only way they will ever become the person capable of standing beside you without burning. Take a deep breath. Release the grip. You have an empire of inner peace to build. Until next time, remain grounded, remain sovereign, and remember, the light you have been searching for has always been your own.